Michael Obhof. I'm a managing director in New York for Ardian for the infrastructure fund. Joined Ardian about 2 years ago, and I manage our digital infrastructure investing practice for the Americas. So over the past 5 to 10 years, I've noticed what I would say three big structural changes to the digital infrastructure landscape. I'd say first, 5G. It's been the biggest structural change that has, and it's becoming increasingly more important on a global scale. I think the reason for that, we think of 5G as just towers, or at least that's just the common thought that we think about. But 5G impacts multiple subsectors within the digital infrastructure space, and that are not just towers. It impacts everything from small cells to fiber to in-building wireless. I would say anything that goes toward helping to propagate that signal, offload data, or solve capacity or coverage concerns. What I would say is that it sounds like we've been talking about 5G for a long time, but I think our belief is there's still a significant amount of runway left, for investment opportunities. But I would say the second big change involves cloud computing and how we consume data today. Advancements in cloud computing have led to a rise in significant builds in data centers, which in turn have become their own asset class. What I would say is that ESG considerations are more important here, as data centers can be quite energy intensive. So we need to think about considerations about location, how to minimize cooling costs, carbon emissions going forward. And so, one thing that we think, could be helpful, and you've started to see some of this trend a little bit, are data centers in areas like the Nordics or even Iceland, where we've made an investment in an integrated telecommunications company recently, where, and if you take Iceland as an example, where you can provide, geothermal, which is renewable energy. So you can provide 100% baseload renewable energy and a cooler climate that minimizes cooling costs. And so I think those would be considerations that people think about going forward. And then lastly, I'd say we're starting to see an increasing push to fiber to the home opportunities. I would say, you think about it in just a few years, and I'd say actually maybe even less than a few years, fiber to the home has moved from being, I would say on the fringe or candidly maybe even outside of the realm to, an emerging subsector, that for a number of funds, fits squarely in the strike zone. It does represent a significant number of transactions that we see in the marketplace. What I would say at Ardian, we're a little bit more cautious in our approach to fiber to the home, at least in the United States. We do have an investment in Europe into the fiber to the home space, but there's different nuances between the US and Europe in terms of regulation, in terms of what the cable alternatives are. And so, we do have experience as a firm in the space, but at least in the US, kind of given the different regulatory environment and some of the different, competitive landscape, we're going to be a little bit more cautious in that space. And so we'll evaluate things, I would say more on a case by case basis. I think the outlook continues to remain positive in the sector. There's a lot of, as we mentioned, 5G, there's still a lot that needs to be done there. And so there's just a lot of forward momentum. I think it's one of the asset classes within the infrastructure space that still provides meaningful, I would say, secular growth, year on year. In terms of areas that we see a lot of opportunity, and potential focus, first, we see a lot of opportunity in the small cell market. This is a space that I would say from 2010 to 18 and 19, there was significant growth. There was I would say a significant pullback, between 2019 and call it, today. And that was really driven by carriers reallocating their CapEx dollars to get their 5G spectrum online. But we, continue to anticipate, a reinvigoration of interest in small cells. And, we think that's a sector that will continue to provide, meaningful growth in the near term. Another sector that we're really excited about, we have an investment in, but, we'll look to make additional investments or increase equity commitments, is ground lease aggregation and ground lease buyouts. And we like this sector for a few reasons. I think first, it's a people-intensive business. It requires you to back a strong team, have the right sales force in place, which is something we prioritize and find attractive at Ardian. Second, it is a model that is more difficult for competitors to replicate. It would be very hard for a new entrant to come into the space and quickly replicate results. They can do it, but it will take a lot of time to do that, which we think provides us a competitive advantage for having that team today. And then third, I think you can use these platforms to build further out in areas like renewables. So whether it's ground lease aggregation underneath solar farms, wind farms, electric vehicle charging, it's a model that's born out of the digital infrastructure space, but we think can be applied to other asset classes. And then lastly, I would say, we focus on, and really like in building wireless a lot. We have a middle market fund in the US right now. And, there's a lot of smaller in-building wireless companies. Again, this kind of comes back to the theme of 5G where, the carriers have spent a lot of energy, a lot of money on 5G and on the spectrum. And so, again, anything that goes to propagating that signal so that people can, consume the mobile data traffic. And, interesting statistic is that 70 to 80% of cell phone usage occurs indoors. And so, it's another theme that we think kind of is born out of 5G, but really, it's kind of, I would say the in-building wireless sector has kind of almost become a sector of its own, over the last couple of years. But see a lot of growth there as well. When we started our infrastructure activity in the U.S., we started it partnering with a lot of European firms that were looking to expand in Americas. Ardian is a global firm. We have offices in 14 countries. I think we're actually opening 2 additional countries, in the near term. And so, it has its roots in Europe, but we're really a global firm. And so we had all these European partners looking to expand in Americas. Now, what I'd say we're seeing is that we're seeing US teams that are looking to expand internationally, sometimes Europe or other places internationally. And that was actually the case for Unison. Unison is a business that's been around since 2003. They, I wouldn't say that they invented the ground lease buyout space, but they definitely are the ones that kind of put it into the forefront to where it is today. And so, Unison was attracted to Ardian's strong global network. I think really our presence in Europe, they wanted to expand into Europe. And so their view was, we know what we need to do in the US. We have that team. We've been doing it for a number of years. We're looking to expand into Europe. And what we really need are relationships. We need people that understand the various sort of, intricacies of the multiple countries in Europe. And, we have, what I call with our global local approach, is that, we're this global firm, but we really take local approaches to each individual markets. And so we have offices in all the key countries in Europe, whether it's Germany, Spain, France, Italy, the UK. And so that was sort of a big attraction. And we're starting to see that, a lot more. And I think, we expect this trend to continue, and we're committed to building out a global platform of wireless infrastructure assets.